Her true story from Atlanta, Georgia. My mother always said that the most dangerous woman in the room is not the one who is screaming. It is the one who is smiling while she plans. I never understood what she meant until I was 7 months pregnant, sitting across from my husband at a dinner table, passing him the salt, asking him about his day, and knowing exactly what was inside his phone. My name is Rachel Ann Whitfield. I am 29 years old. I grew up in Atlanta, Georgia, in a house that smelled like cornbread and fabric softener, and the particular warmth of a family that didn't have much money, but had more than enough love. My mother, Gloria, raised my sister and me with 2 things above everything else: dignity and patience. She said, "Rachel, dignity means you never let them see you broken, and patience means you wait until the moment is exactly right." I thought she was talking about job interviews and difficult neighbours. She was talking about something much bigger. I met James Whitfield at a company networking event in downtown Atlanta on a Thursday evening in October. I was 24 years old, fresh out of my MBA program, working my first real job as a financial analyst at a mid-sized consulting firm. I was wearing a blue dress that my mother had pressed that morning and heels that were slightly too high, and I was standing near the appetizer table because I didn't know anyone, and the shrimp looked good. James walked over and said, "The shrimp is better than it looks." I laughed. He smiled. That was it. That was the whole beginning. He was 31, tall, well-dressed, the kind of confident that isn't arrogance but certainty. He worked in real estate development. He had a firm handshake and a warm laugh, and he asked me questions and actually listened to the answers, which at 24 felt revolutionary. We dated for 2 years. They were good years. Not perfect. Nothing is perfect, but good in the ways that matter. He met my mother and she liked him, which was not a small thing because my mother was not a woman who liked easily. He remembered small things: my coffee order, the name of my college roommate, the anniversary of my grandmother's passing. I thought, this is a man who pays attention. I thought, this is a man who will show up. We got married in June, 3 years after the networking event with the shrimp. Small wedding, 70 people, my mother's backyard, decorated with string lights and white flowers. My sister Maya was my maid of honour. James's best friend Derek was his best man. My father, who had been largely absent during my childhood, but had been trying in recent years, walked me down the aisle and cried so hard my mother had to hand him a napkin. James and I wrote our own vows. His last line was, "I promise to choose you every single day, without exception, without reservation, for the rest of my life." I believed him. I believed him completely. The first 2 years of our marriage were good. We were building something together. We bought a condo in Midtown. We talked about the future with the particular excitement of 2 people who believe the future is going to be exactly what they plan. Kids in a few years, a house with a yard, travel before the kids came, maybe a dog. James was working hard. His real estate firm was growing. He started coming home later, which I understood because I was also working hard, putting in long hours at the consulting firm, building my own career. We were both ambitious. We had agreed on that from the beginning. The changes were small at first, the kind of small that you notice but talk yourself out of because you trust the person, and you don't want to be the suspicious wife, and you don't want to make something out of nothing. He started going to the gym in the evenings instead of the mornings, which he had always done. He started being more careful with his phone. Not dramatically careful, Not the obvious hiding of a guilty man, but the subtle kind. Screen slightly angled away, faster to pick it up when it buzzed, quicker to put it face down on the table. I noticed, and I filed it away, because I was not ready to know yet. There is a moment in every marriage where a wife knows something is wrong before she has proof, before she can say specifically what it is. She just knows. Something in the air has shifted. Something in the weight of the room is different. I knew in February, not from anything specific, just from the way he kissed me goodbye one morning, distracted, already somewhere else in his mind. And I stood at the door, watching him walk to his car, and I thought, very quietly, to myself, something is wrong. I didn't say it out loud. Not yet. I found out for certain on a Tuesday evening in March. James had left his phone on the kitchen counter while he showered. I was not the kind of woman who went through her husband's phone. I want to be very clear about that. In 4 years of being together, 2 of them married, I had never once unlocked his phone to look at his messages. I had never needed to, and I had never wanted to, because I believed in trust and I believed in him. But that night, the phone buzzed on the counter while I was standing right next to it making tea, and the screen lit up, and the preview of the message was visible before I could look away. The name at the top was Vanessa. The message said, "Miss you already. Tonight was perfect." I stood completely still for a long moment. The kettle boiled behind me. Steam rose. I didn't move. I picked up the phone. I knew his passcode because we had never hidden them from each other. That had been the agreement. Nothing to hide. Nothing to lock. I opened the messages. I read everything. It took me 11 minutes. I know because I checked the clock when I started and checked it again when I finished. 11 minutes to read 4 months of messages between my husband and a woman named Vanessa Cole, who worked at his firm. 4 months. He had been seeing her since November, since 2 weeks before Thanksgiving, since the month I had started thinking quietly about maybe starting a family. The messages were specific and detailed, and I will not describe them because some things do not need to be repeated. What I will say is that by the time I had read to the end, I understood that this was not a moment of weakness or a one-time mistake. This was a relationship. She called him babe. He called her his person. His person. I put the phone back on the counter exactly where I had found it. I turned off the kettle. I went to the bedroom and I sat on the edge of the bed and I pressed my hands flat against my knees and I breathed in and out very slowly for a very long time. When James came out of the shower, towel around his waist, hair damp, smiling at me the way he always did, I looked at him and I said, very calmly, "Dinner is almost ready," he said. "Great. Smells good." He went to get dressed. I went back to the kitchen. I made dinner. We ate together at the table. He talked about a new development project. I asked questions and listened and passed the bread and refilled his water glass. He had no idea. That was the night I became my mother's daughter. I need you to understand something about what happened next, because some people will hear this story and think what I did were cold or calculated or even cruel. I want you to understand that it was none of those things. What it was necessary. What it was the only way a woman who had been betrayed so completely could protect herself and her future without falling apart. I did not confront James that night. I did not confront him the next night or the night after that. I did not cry in front of him. I did not ask him if he was having an affair. I did not go through his phone again. Instead, I called my mother. I drove to her house the next afternoon while James was at work and I sat at her kitchen table and I told her everything. My mother listened without interrupting. She made me a cup of tea. She sat across from me and held both my hands, and she was very quiet for a very long time. Then she said, "Baby, how long has this been going on?" "4 months that I can see," I said. "Maybe longer." Mama nodded slowly. "And you haven't said anything to him?" "No." She looked at me for a long moment. "Good," she said. "Don't. Not yet." Then she picked up her phone and called her own attorney, a woman named Patricia Osei, who had handled my mother's affairs for 15 years and who, it turned out, had a colleague who specialised in exactly this kind of situation. 2 days later, I was sitting in the office of an attorney named Michelle Hartley on the 14th floor of a building in Buckhead. She was 50 years old, sharp-eyed, and wore reading glasses on a chain around her neck. She shook my hand and said, "Tell me everything." I told her everything. She listened the way lawyers listen, without expression, taking notes, occasionally asking a brief, precise question. When I finished, she took off her glasses and looked at me directly. "Rachel, you are in a stronger position than you think. Georgia is an equitable distribution state. If we can document the affair, and particularly any marital funds used during it, that affects the settlement significantly." I nodded. "I need you to do a few things," she said. "And I need you to do them without him knowing. Can you do that?" "Yes," I said. She believed me. I don't know why, but she did. Over the next 3 weeks, while James came home every evening and kissed me hello and asked about my day, and we watched television together on the couch like a normal married couple, I was quietly doing the following things. I made copies of all our joint financial statements going back 2 years. I photographed every document in the house that had both our names on it. I compiled a list of every joint asset: the condo, the savings account, the investment account James managed, the car. Michelle had a private investigator she worked with regularly. His name was Carl, and he was a quiet man who drove a grey sedan and was very good at his job. Over the course of 2 weeks, Carl documented 11 meetings between James and Vanessa, hotel check-ins paid with a credit card that I had not known existed, dinners at restaurants, a weekend trip to Savannah that James had told me was a work conference in Savannah in March when it was cold. I had made him a playlist for the drive. Carl brought me photographs, timestamps, receipts. Michelle filed them carefully. Everything was documented, organised, dated. Everything was ready. And then I found out I was pregnant. I took the test on a Sunday morning in April while James was at the gym. I sat on the bathroom floor for a very long time, holding that small plastic stick and looking at 2 pink lines and feeling something that I cannot fully describe. Because it was not simple. It was not one feeling. It was many feelings at once, layered on top of each other like the pages of a book. Joy, because I had wanted this. I had wanted this for a long time, and the 2 pink lines were real, and they were mine. Fear, because everything I had been quietly building toward, the attorney, the documents, the plan, all of it was about to become more complicated. Grief, because the father of my child was not who I had believed him to be, and I could not unknow what I knew, and I could not unfeel what I felt. And underneath all of it, something harder to name, a kind of fierce, quiet certainty that this baby was mine, that whatever happened with James, whatever I decided, this child was coming into a life that would be stable and loved and protected, that I would make sure of it. I called my mother. She cried when I told her. Happy tears first, then the complicated kind. "Baby, She said. "What are you going to do?" "I'm going to finish what I started," I said. "And then I'm going to have my baby." Mama was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "You are the strongest woman I know, Rachel Ann. I learned from you," I said. I told James about the pregnancy that evening. I watched his face very carefully when I told him. He was genuinely happy. I could see that clearly. He picked me up and held me, and his voice was warm and real, and for just a moment, just a breath of a moment, I let myself feel the grief of it. The grief of a man who could be this happy about a baby while doing what he was doing. The grief of the distance between who I had believed him to be and who he actually was. Then I put the grief away, back in its box, back on its shelf. There would be time for grief later. There were things to do first. James's behaviour shifted after the pregnancy news. He came home earlier. He was more present, more attentive. He put his hand on my stomach in the mornings before he left for work. He started researching strollers and car seats with an enthusiasm that would have been touching if I had not known what I knew. Vanessa's name kept appearing on his phone, but less frequently now. I was not checking his phone anymore. I did not need to. I had everything I needed. But Michelle had Carl continue monitoring, and the meetings with Vanessa continued, just more carefully scheduled around the pregnancy milestones, around my doctor's appointments, around the evenings when James was very deliberately home. He was managing 2 lives. He thought he was doing it well. He had no idea that I was managing something much larger. The baby shower was my mother's idea, or at least the timing of it was. We were sitting in her kitchen in my 6th month. Me, with my feet up, because my ankles were swollen, Mama making soup, my sister Maya at the table, sorting through baby shower invitation lists, and Mama said very casually, "When is James's family coming down for the shower?" And something clicked into place in my mind. A baby shower. All of his family. All of my family. Everyone together in one room. I looked at my mother and I saw in her eyes that she had already thought of it too. My mother, who had taught me dignity and patience. My mother, who had held my hands in Michelle's office waiting room. My mother, who had not said one word to James in the month since I had told her, who had smiled at him at Sunday dinners and accepted his compliments on her cooking and never once let on. She raised an eyebrow at me over her soup pot. I nodded slowly. Maya looked up from the invitation list. "What?" "Nothing," Mama and I said at the same time. Maya looked between us. She was 26 and sharp, and she had always been able to tell when Mama and I were communicating without speaking. She set down the invitations. "Rachel, I'll tell you later," I said. She studied my face for a moment. Then she nodded. "Okay." She trusted me. That meant everything. I called Michelle the next morning. "I want to move the timeline up," I said. "How far up?" "The baby shower is in 6 weeks. A pause. "Rachel, are you sure?" "I'm sure." Another pause. Longer. Then, "Okay, let me make some calls." Over the next 4 weeks, Michelle and her team worked quietly and thoroughly. Every document was finalised. Every piece of evidence was organised. The petition for divorce was prepared and ready to file. The petition for division of marital assets was prepared. The documentation of marital funds used for the affair was complete. Hotel receipts. Credit card statements showing a card James had opened without my knowledge. Restaurant bills. The weekend in Savannah. Michelle had also done something I had asked her to do, that she had initially questioned, but eventually agreed was legally within bounds. She had sent an anonymous tip, carefully worded and thoroughly documented to the Georgia Real Estate Commission regarding certain irregular financial practices in James's firm. Not fabricated, not exaggerated, simply accurate. The commission had opened a preliminary inquiry. Carl had one final job. He prepared a packet. Photographs, timestamps, receipts, the credit card statements, a hotel log from the Savannah weekend. Everything printed clearly on white paper. Everything dated and organised. The packets were sealed in plain white envelopes. One for James's mother, Patricia. One for his father, Robert. One for his sister, Keisha. One for his brother, Marcus. One for his best friend, Derek, who had stood at our wedding and heard James say, "I promise to choose you every single day." One for my mother, though she already knew everything. I made hers anyway, because she deserved to hold it in her hands. The day before the shower, I packed a bag for myself and one for the baby things. I put them in my car. I called my mother and confirmed that the guest room was ready. I called Michelle and confirmed that the filing would happen Monday morning, 2 days after the shower. Then I went home and I made James his favourite dinner, and we sat at the table and talked about baby names, and I was calm and warm and present, and he had absolutely no idea. After dinner, he put his hand on my stomach and the baby kicked and he laughed with delight. "She knows her daddy's voice," he said. I smiled at him. "She does." I did not feel nothing. I want to be honest about that. I was not made of stone. Looking at him in that moment, the father of my daughter, a man I had loved genuinely and completely, I felt the full weight of everything that was broken between us. I felt it like a physical thing, heavy and real, but I also felt ready. The baby shower was on a Saturday in October. The weather was perfect, which felt intentional. The way certain days feel arranged by something beyond coincidence. Cool enough for a light jacket. Sunny and clear. The kind of Atlanta fall day that makes you remember why you live here. My mother's house was decorated beautifully. Maya had done most of it. White and yellow streamers. A banner that said, "Baby girl Whitfield coming soon." Tables set with flowers. And food that Mama had been cooking for 2 days. It smelled like the best version of home. Guests arrived from noon. James's parents, Patricia and Robert, drove up from Savannah. His sister Keisha came with her husband. His brother Marcus came with his girlfriend. Derek arrived looking handsome and easy, the way Derek always looked. Relaxed in every room, my family filled the other half. Aunts, cousins, church friends of my mother's who had known me since I was in pigtails. My grandmother's best friend, Miss Louise, who was 83 and had driven herself and refused help parking. James moved through the room like a man who belonged there, warm and charming, talking football with Marcus, complimenting Patricia on her dress, hugging my aunts. He was good in rooms. He had always been good in rooms. I watched him and I thought, this is the last time you will walk through a room not knowing. I ate. I laughed. I opened gifts. There was a white onesie with Daddy's girl on the front, and everyone looked at James and he beamed. There was a handmade quilt from Miss Louise that made me catch my breath. Hand-stitched, yellow and white. The kind of thing made with so much love you can feel it through the fabric. I held it against my chest for a moment. My mother caught my eye across the room. She gave me the smallest nod. The gifts were all opened. The cake was cut. Candles were lit. People were beginning to settle into that comfortable after-dessert warmth of a good gathering. I stood up. "I want to say something," I said. The room quieted. 22 faces turned toward me. "I want to thank everyone for being here today. This baby girl is already so loved, and she doesn't even know it yet. People smiled. James smiled. His mother reached over and patted his hand. I also want to say, I continued, that I have learned something very important over the past few months about patience. My mother always told me that patience means waiting until the moment is exactly right. I looked at my mother. She was very still. I think this is exactly right. I nodded to Maya, who was standing near the side table. Maya picked up the stack of envelopes. She walked quietly around the room, placing one in front of each member of James's family, one in front of Derek. She set the last one in front of James himself. The room watched this with the particular confusion of people who don't yet understand what they are seeing. James looked at the envelope, then at me. Rachel, what is this? Open it, I said. What is... James, I said. My voice was very calm. Open the envelope. He opened it. I watched his face as he looked at the first page. The colour changed. Not dramatically, not all at once. The way light leaves a room when a cloud passes over the sun. Gradually, then completely. Around the room, others were opening their envelopes. Patricia opened hers. She looked at the photographs for a very long moment. Then she looked at her son. Her expression was the specific expression of a mother who has suspected something and been hoping she was wrong. Robert opened his. Set it down. Picked it up again. Keisha opened hers and said, "Oh my God." Just that. Quietly. Marcus opened his and went very still. Derek opened his and closed it again immediately. He looked at James with an expression I cannot fully describe. Something between grief and anger. James was still staring at the pages in his hands. His face had gone completely still. The room was absolutely silent. 22 people and no one made a sound. Only the baby shower banner rustling slightly in the draft from the air conditioning. James finally looked up at me. His voice was barely above a whisper. "Rachel, the divorce petition will be filed Monday morning," I said. "Michelle Hartley is my attorney. You have already been sent her contact information." "Rachel, let me explain." "There is nothing to explain," I said. My voice did not shake. I had practiced this moment in my mind so many times that it arrived like something familiar. The documents speak for themselves. Patricia stood up. She was a tall woman, James's height, and she had a presence that filled rooms. She walked across the space between herself and her son very slowly. Then she slapped him. Not hard, and not violently, but clearly, deliberately. The sound was very distinct in the silent room. She said, "This woman is carrying your child." James had no answer. Patricia turned to me. Her eyes were bright. She took both my hands in hers. "Rachel," she said, "I am so sorry." I squeezed her hands. "This is not your fault, Patricia." She shook her head. She could not speak. Robert had not moved from his chair. He was looking at the photographs in the envelope with the expression of a man who has been handed something he cannot put down and cannot keep holding. Maya appeared at my side. She put her arm around me and I felt her warmth and steadiness, and I was grateful for her in a way that went beyond words. James stood up. "Can we please talk privately?" "No," I said. "Rachel, please. This is not..." "James," my voice was quiet, but absolute. "I have been patient for 7 months. I am done being patient. Everything I need to say is in that envelope. Everything else will go through Michelle." He looked at me for a long time. His face was doing things I could not entirely read. Shame, certainly. Desperation. And underneath it something that might have been the beginning of understanding, the dawning recognition of what he had thrown away. But I was 7 months pregnant, and I had been carrying this alone for 7 months. and I did not have space in me for his recognition just then. I turned to the room. I want to thank everyone for coming. The food is still out. You are all welcome to stay. I looked at James. I'll be staying at my mother's until the proceedings are complete. I picked up my purse, which I had placed deliberately near my chair. My mother was already beside me, Maya on my other side. Miss Louise called from her chair, "Baby, you hold your head up." I looked at her, 83 years old, white hair, eyes that had seen everything. "Yes, ma'am," I said. We walked through the quiet room and out the front door into the October sunshine. The days that followed were not easy. I want to be honest about that because the truth of what happens after the moment matters as much as the moment itself. There were hard days when I cried in my mother's bathroom with the fan running so nobody could hear. Days when the grief of the marriage was so heavy I couldn't eat. Days when I thought about the man I had believed James was and mourned him the way you mourn someone who died, because in a way, that person did die. He simply turned out never to have existed. James called many times in the days after the shower. I did not answer. Michelle handled all communication. What James's family did in those days mattered enormously to me, and I want to name it because it deserves to be named. Patricia called me every day, not to defend her son, not to ask me to reconsider, simply to ask how I was sleeping, whether I was eating enough, whether the baby was moving well. She brought food to my mother's house twice. She sat with me for an hour one afternoon and held my hand, and we did not talk about James at all. We talked about her own first pregnancy 34 years ago. We talked about what it felt like to become a mother. "Whatever happens between you and James," she said before she left, "I am this baby's grandmother. That does not change." I cried after she left. The good kind. Keisha texted me regularly, short messages, checking in, sending articles about Atlanta baby stores, sending photographs of her own kids with silly captions to make me laugh. She was the kind of sister-in-law I had hoped she would be, and in the wreckage of the marriage, she was still that. Derek came to see me once. He sat in my mother's living room with his hands clasped and he said, "I didn't know. I want you to know that I didn't know." I believed him. He looked like a man who had been carrying something heavy since the baby shower. "I should have paid closer attention," he said. "I should have been a better friend to both of you." I didn't tell him he was wrong. My daughter was born on December 14th, a Tuesday morning, 6 weeks after the baby shower, 8 days before her due date, which felt like her own commentary on everything. I named her Gloria Rose Whitfield. Gloria for my mother. Rose, because my grandmother's middle name was Rose, and because some names carry people forward. She was 7 pounds, 2 ounces. She had James's nose and my eyes and a full head of dark hair that the nurses kept exclaiming over. She arrived at 6:42 in the morning when the sky outside the hospital window was just turning the particular grey-pink of early winter dawn. My mother was in the room. Maya was in the room. Patricia had driven up from Savannah and was in the waiting area. When they put Gloria on my chest, I looked at her face for the first time and I thought, very clearly as I have ever thought anything, this was worth everything. Every hard day, every silent dinner, every carefully calm morning, every moment of carrying it alone. It was all worth this. She looked up at me with the ancient, unfocused gaze of the newly arrived, and I said very quietly into the top of her head, "Hi, baby. I've been waiting for you." She made a small sound, like an answer. My mother stood at my shoulder. She put her hand on my back, and she said nothing at all. She didn't need to. The divorce was finalised 4 months later. Michelle was thorough and precise, and Georgia law, as she had promised, was on my side. The division of marital assets was equitable. The condo, the savings account, the investment account, the hidden credit card that had funded 4 months of hotels and restaurants, and a Savannah weekend was documented and factored into the settlement. James's firm, already under inquiry from the Real Estate Commission, settled the preliminary complaint with a fine and a compliance agreement that cost him considerably. He did not fight the proceedings. I think there was a part of him that understood, somewhere underneath everything, that he had no ground to stand on, that the woman he had underestimated had been more thorough than he had imagined, and that the most dignified thing left to him was to let it proceed. He asked through Michelle for regular access to Gloria. I agreed to a fair visitation schedule because Gloria deserved her father and her father's family, and whatever James had done to our marriage, he was not a bad man in every sense. He was a weak man who had made catastrophic choices. Those are different things. My daughter should know her father. My daughter should know Patricia and Keisha and Marcus. She deserved her whole family. That decision was not easy. I want to be clear about that. It was the hardest one I made. Harder than the baby shower. Harder than filing the papers. But I made it for Gloria, and I would make it again. Gloria is 14 months old now as I tell you this. She walks with the particular determined wobble of a new toddler, as if she has somewhere very important to be and is getting there as fast as her body will allow. She has discovered the word no with great enthusiasm and applies it to everything, including things she clearly wants. She laughs at dogs. She is fascinated by birds. She pats my face in the mornings when she wakes up, both small hands on my cheeks, and looks at me with the complete focused love of a person for whom you are the entire world. I went back to work when she was 3 months old. My firm had held my position. I am good at my job, and they knew it, and I was grateful for that. Michelle had also referred me to a financial planning firm that needed someone with my specific background, and I have been doing some consulting work on the side, building something of my own, slowly and carefully, the way you build things that last. My mother watches Gloria 2 days a week. She sings to her, the same songs she sang to me, and I sometimes stand in the hallway outside the room and listen and feel something so full and complete it has no name. Maya is the best aunt in the living world. She shows up with bags of things Gloria doesn't need and stands in the middle of the living room making ridiculous faces until the baby laughs, and then keeps doing it long after the baby has moved on, because Maya is the one who can't stop laughing. Patricia visits once a month. She and Gloria have developed their own language, a series of sounds and expressions that I do not entirely understand, but that clearly communicates everything they need to say to each other. Patricia brings food. She always brings too much. I have stopped telling her this because she considers it a feature, not a flaw. James sees Gloria on the agreed schedule. He is good with her, gentle and patient in a way that is perhaps easier with a child than it was with a wife. I do not know what is happening in his life, and I do not ask. What I know is that when he brings Gloria back on Sunday evenings, she is always happy and well fed and wearing whatever outfit I sent her in, which tells me he is paying attention. That is enough for now. I want to tell you something about what I learned in those 7 months of waiting, because I know that some of you hearing this will wonder how I did it. How I sat across from him at dinner for 7 months, knowing what I knew. How I smiled and passed the bread and made his coffee and did not break. Here is what I want you to know. It was not easy. I want to be absolutely clear about that. There were nights when I went to the bathroom and ran the cold water to cover the sound, and I cried until I was empty. There were mornings when I looked at his face over the breakfast table, and the grief was so enormous I could not speak, and I covered it by looking down at my phone. There were days when I almost said it, almost let everything come out right there in the kitchen over scrambled eggs. What kept me silent was not coldness. It was not cruelty. It was not revenge for its own sake. It was this. I had a daughter coming, and I needed to make sure she arrived into a life that was protected, legally protected, financially protected. I needed every document in order. I needed every asset accounted for. I needed to make sure that the life I was going to build for her was on solid ground before the ground shifted. My silence was not weakness. My silence was the foundation I was laying. My mother had taught me patience. Michelle had taught me strategy. My own 7 months had taught me something else. That a woman who has decided to protect herself and her child is capable of things she would not have believed possible. That grief can coexist with determination. That love and sorrow and quiet fury can all live in the same heart at the same time without cancelling each other out. And that sometimes the most powerful thing a woman can do is simply wait for the exactly right moment. I am 29 years old. I have a 14-month-old daughter who pats my face in the mornings. I have a mother who taught me everything that mattered. I have a sister who makes my baby laugh. I have a career I am building into something real. I have an apartment that is mine, that smells like Gloria's baby lotion and my mother's soup when she comes to cook on Sundays, and the particular warmth of a small life being built with intention. It is not the life I planned. I will not pretend it is. I planned a different life. I planned the house with the yard and the dog and the husband who showed up. I planned the 10-year anniversary trip and the growing old together, and the particular comfort of a love that has been tested by time and held. I grieved that life. I still grieve it sometimes. On quiet evenings when Gloria is asleep and the apartment is still, and I sit with my tea and the weight of it settles. But here is what I also have. I have the truest knowledge I have ever had of who I am, of what I am capable of the particular strength that lives in a woman who has been underestimated and has decided to let that be someone else's problem. I have a daughter who will grow up knowing that her mother did not crumble, that her mother stood in a room full of people and spoke the truth and walked out into the October sunshine without looking back. I have the look on Patricia's face when she first held Gloria. I have Miss Louise at 83 years old, calling across a room, "Baby, you hold your head up." I have my mother at my shoulder in the delivery room, her hand on my back, saying nothing and everything. I have Gloria's face at 6:42 in the morning, when the sky was turning pink and she arrived 8 days early, like she had somewhere to be. And I have the understanding, bone deep and permanent, that dignity is not something someone can take from you. Patience is not weakness. And silence, chosen deliberately and held carefully, is sometimes the loudest thing in the room. My mother was right. She was talking about something much bigger than job interviews. She was talking about this. If this story found you today, if you have ever been in a room where someone underestimated you and smiled anyway, if you have ever carried something heavy and quietly while building something stronger, if you have ever been told by someone's actions that you did not matter and decided in the privacy of your own heart that they were wrong, then you belong here. This is Tears and Tales, where forgotten women become unforgettable, where patience is not passivity but power, where silence, held long enough, becomes the truth that fills every room. Subscribe today, because every woman who has ever been underestimated deserves to hear this. You were never weak. You were simply waiting for the right moment, and when it came, you were ready.